Should fucking do it. Didn't even start recording. Okay, we're good. Rizwan, this is episode 66, I think. Yeah, I think it's 66.
I think we should call it 666, bro. Just
oh shit, that's nice.
Just for the culture.
That's good.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, ठीक है. Episode 666. That's Jatin. You know everyone else.
Yep.
Please do the intro.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to TPR Pod, episode number 666. And we have a very special guest today, Jatin, from Hamara Pados Mulk.
Yeah.
And are you in the Padosi Mulk right now?
No, I'm in Princeton, New Jersey.
Padosi Mulk. That's fine. It's close to either one of us, I guess.
Yeah.
At least.
So, this is another horror stories episode, and this time it's Delhi horror stories. And Jatin has a lot of stories to tell, hopefully.
Yeah. Jatin, Rizwan's the guy who we have as you can imagine, we have a WhatsApp group, and your thread on Twitter was basically the impetus for this episode. We thought we had to get in touch because of our history. So, but before we get into that, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me, guys. Real pleasure. It's
No,
my first podcast. I've never been there, so let's see how it goes.
Hopefully, this will not turn you off podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought I'm too old for it. I thought it's more of a hipster thing, but
Yeah. Well, people think we're too old for it, and we're still.
Speak for yourselves, guys.
Sarkhail is very young. Yeah. Guys, this is the second episode, by the way, just if you're watching and something is off. This is the second episode that we're recording in our fancy new setup. So if things aren't working out, we're not sure why, but hopefully in the coming episodes, we'll figure it out.
You could just blame it on ghosts, right?
Yeah, sure. Jatin, how are you holding up? Have you been these days? I think it's a bit of a custom now for us. जैसे हमारी emails में, it just went from hope this email finds you well. Now that has like much more meaning.
Be well, be safe.
Yeah.
So I've been doing good. I think just sitting at home, primarily doing calls and work stuff, and so it gets to you after a while. Then I was just sitting, going through random stuff, and I realized that I have these diaries full of stuff and random blogs I didn't know the period, and notes I had kept on some out of the Prince book that I had collected about Delhi. And I've been like, I was born in Delhi, I was brought up in Delhi, and I've been like obsessed with Delhi my entire life. As you can imagine, it's a very, very, very old city, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you literally cannot walk 2 kilometers without bumping into something that has a history to it, that has a story to it, whether it's a monument or a restaurant or anything. So that's what I did in my entire 20s and early 30s. I just walked across Delhi, took a bus, and just spoke and collected stories. So Delhi is it's a city of stories, and it's a city of storytellers. When you are in a city which has so much history, any random place you'll stand, you have somebody telling you something. मैं बताता हूँ, रुको यहाँ पर, मैं आपको उसकी कहानी बताता हूँ. आप पान की दुकान पर जा रहे, even if you don't smoke, people just go just to listen to stuff. Every freaking restaurant has a dish that's 150-year-old. Everybody claims that this is the original dish from that Akbar first had it, and then somebody had it, and so that's all random stuff that people just some bullshit, some true, and that's the thing about.
I just want to know the real story behind Chicken 65 someday, and
so Chicken 65 is
wherever that is from. I don't know.
I'll see. Chicken 65 is a South Indian dish. It's more from the south part of Delhi. I've stayed there for 3 years. a Delhi boy and I'm a South Delhi boy. And I don't know. So South Delhi boy essentially means it's one of that, it's area where everybody is supposed to be rich. I'm not, but everybody else is supposed to be rich, and they have an attitude, and so I always say that no matter where I live, I was born a South Delhi boy, I'll die a South Delhi boy. So chicken 65, that's out of thing for me.
Okay.
Tandoori chicken, yes, I can tell you that story, but not chicken 65. This is I forgot who wrote this, but this is beautiful share or a poem that was written about Delhi, which was Kabhi Yaqeen Kabhi Guman ki Dilli, Anginat Imtihan ki Dilli. ना अब महल है ना वो मकबरे ना महल है ना वो मकबरे हैं कभी थी आन बान शान की दिल्ली किस्से कहानी ख्वाब हकीकत उर्दू ज़बान की दिल्ली असदुल्ला खान गालिब की दिल्ली. So that really describes Delhi. So it all started when I started collecting stuff, and then I realized when I was locked in this whole COVID situation that and I've been telling these stories about Delhi since time immemorial. Nice stories, good stories, stories about culture. Nobody gave a shit. And then one day I write about all these, haunted stories and ghost stories. Just put stuff together, and I just started putting, and it blew up really well. So that's the background.
When I first read your thread, and I think the others might also have thought the same, we thought that perhaps, we didn't know where you were living at the time, like right now, but we thought you were maybe a journalist who was investigating stuff. So was that, or was it just like a hobby of yours, just talking to people?
So it was my hobby is just collecting stories. Now it's so when I started collecting these stories, right? So it so happens that, and I'm sure it's true for any city which has a history like Lahore or Karachi, right? Even in Pakistan, or even for Ireland in that matter, which is or Scotland, which have a lot of history, is like every city has two parts to it. When you talk about history, one is a documented history, which is written, documented. It's written there in the books. It's verified history, right? And the other is anecdotal history, which is it's not verified. These are the stuff that's there in people's head, and they pass from one person to another. And these ghost stories happen to be, so what I was more interested on was the anecdotal history. The stuff that, you were sitting with a person who's a guard outside a monument, outside a maqbara, and you're just smoking with him and he'll tell you a story. Whether it's right or wrong, who knows, but it's a great story and it's a great setting. So I was more interested in collecting those anecdotal things that was there in people's head. And these ghost stories, I believe, are are very important for that oral history of a place. And therefore, they need to be preserved, because everything else goes into books or is taught or it's there. But these somewhere down the line gets lost or gets destroyed and never gets passed on. So this is sort of my attempt. I don't know how, probably nobody would care, but just to document that anecdotal part of my city, which probably, 10, 20 years down the line, nobody would even remember.
And it's really, it makes sense what you're saying, because documented history, always it's done with the best of intentions, but it ends up always having like this sort of sterile or clinical sort of feel to it, where it's just the facts, and it's hard to get like an emotional context. And whereas when you're talking to someone and he's not an archaeologist or a sociologist, and he's just a guy, like you said, could be a panwala, could be whoever, and it's just something he heard from someone else perhaps, and now he's telling it to you, and he tells it in like suna kuch bataya kuch agle ne samjha koi kuch aur. It's
a Chinese whisper. So it's a Chinese. So anybody tells, so especially these stories, which and it's true for everything, right? These stories which are like related to a particular monument, right? Which is like an artifact that's there. So you will have 10 stories that this place is haunted, but then 10 people will tell you different versions, because wait, किसी ने सुना कुछ, बताया कुछ, मैंने उस पर 2 चीजें और ऐड कर, तो होते पता नहीं कहाँ पहुँच जाता है वो.
In the end, मैं खुद जिन. I was haunting.
But I don't know as much if this applies to Karachi as much, but Rizwan being our resident official Mr. Lahore, I think you would also, I think तुम्हारे college और A levels के ज़माने में you
Oh,
were notorious.
definitely. And definitely. Like so many Jinn stories everywhere. Maybe that's a unifying factor.
Yeah, हम देसियों में हैं ये.
Do people
Yeah,
in Delhi
yeah.
use the word Jinn?
Jinn, So Delhi is called City of Jinns. There is a
Oh.
very famous book
Wow.
by William Dalrymple, which is City
Yeah.
of Jinns. So Delhi is actually we have like resident Jinns. So there's a place in Delhi. There's a cricket field which is Firoz Shah Kotla.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
The Firoz Shah Kotla is a
Yeah,
famous cricket field. The Firoz Shah Kotla is actually surrounded by a fort, which is called Firoz Shah Fort. So there, you have like different resident Jinns of that place. It's like Nanne Khan is one Jinn of so they are named. They're actually Jinns who are named, and every Thursday people go there and they sort of tie the thread and everything. So Delhi is actually pretty famous for Jinns.
So if there's no further questions, I have some stuff that I want to talk about from Delhi because I feel some sort of connection to Delhi because my family is from Delhi from way back when. So
my family is from my grandfather is from Kalabagh,
okay,
which is I believe is near Rawalpindi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jatin, how about we dive right in? Now, there was a whole
Sure.
bunch of stories in your thread. I think we're up to 10 so far. We were discussing in the DMs which ones to talk about. You had an idea. I had some selections. So, based on whatever you feel, let's just start with the first story that comes to mind. The way we'll do it is people watching this might have read it, but I think it would be interesting if you retell the story. It'll give some
I
more.
didn't read it. I didn't read it on purpose because I was hoping you'd-
Sarkhail is also a bit illiterate, so he didn't read it. It's a limitation जिसका फायदा हो गया.
Gen Z, right? I mean, reading is like मतलब किताब खोल के जिन निकलेंगे अंदर से.
We're trying our best. But how about you give us the story and then
So
we'll go
I
from
sort of if you see the pattern of the stories, I try to like mix and match. So there'll be one which is like very contemporary, which is like set up in today as well. Then there'll be one which is like started somewhere in 19th century or 14th century and it continued till today. So I try to mix and match so that there's no repetition involved. So here. I'll start with one which is like very contemporary. It's like almost like an urban legend, right? So there is I don't know how much probably you guys will know about the demographics of Delhi. So there is a place called Gurgaon, which is right outside of Delhi. It's not part of Delhi, but it's part of what we call as National Capital Region. So it's not like, so if anybody tells you that they stay in Gurgaon or Noida, but they say in Delhi, tell them it's bullshit. Just for the records.
I kind of get this because I've probably heard about this in Badshah ke gaane.
So it's the same thing. So Gurgaon is not Delhi, Noida is not Delhi, Delhi is
all right.
What Delhi is. Which way? So this is like it's in separate state, but it's like a bordering area of Delhi.
Right.
And that's where there's a lot of multinationals have come up over the last 15 or 20 odd years. The boom started sometimes in late 90s and 2000, and that was with coming of BPOs and call centers. So that's where the whole BPO and call center hub started. So that's where a lot of new buildings started coming up. Now, Gurgaon, just by the during the Mughal era, it was an outlaw area. So anybody who was escaping the law from Delhi, like robbers and murderers and all those people, they would go and hide in Gurgaon. And then to make a living, they used to like attack and kill convoys who were traveling from Delhi to some other area, right? So just by the history, it has got a lot of like killings and all that stuff happening. So it's a pretty violent, and that's why it's actually a place which has quite a decent number of these horror stories based out of. So this particular place, they opened.
So how long ago? Just to cut you off, how long ago are we talking? Is in terms of
this story?
No, like this history of robbers and bandits.
So this is, you can say, probably around 14th, 15th century, right?
Okay, old.
Oh, very old, yeah. So
right.
like I said, it's almost like Mughal.
Sure.
From that time onwards, and then it, over the years, it became more of an agriculture area, and now, of course, it's a booming. Some of the most real estate in the world is there. So coming back to the story. So around 1999, 2000 is when this whole boom started. Buildings started getting built. Agricultural land was being acquired. So this new call center came up on a land which people say that used to be an old graveyard. Right?
Okay.
So obviously they were like, but other than some guy smoking and seeing some images moving here and there was like no hauntings associated with it. Right? It was a normal place. People used to come and go. So one of the employees there, a girl, and she was like very, a top performer, an employee. She used to work in an outbound call center, and that call center used to sell mobile phone plans for US and UK clients, and they used to it was like B2C sort of a call center, business to customer selling mobile phone plans. And she was like the top performer, like her sales were like through the roof, and she was like top performer and stuff. So on one particular day, they moved her. There was like huge shortage of the staff, and they moved her to a inbound call center, which was like customer service call center. And so she started taking the calls. And after a while, she got into this very long call. And inbound calls are usually like 5 minutes, 7 minutes. That was their history. This was like 45 minutes, 1 hour. And she was like nobody could hear what's going on. I mean, there were two people besides her who could probably hear some stuff, but she kept talking and talking and talking, but nobody outside could really figure out what she's talking about. After 45 minutes, and as and when the call progressed, she kept getting more distressed and more trouble and, almost like losing composure. So after 45 minutes, when the call ended, she stood up and she just said that I need to go home, not feeling well, and she left. Behind her two colleagues who were like almost acting as she in a ghost or something. They were like extremely distressed. They just walked right outside. Next day, the two of her colleagues were found dead under, some circumstance, not normal. One had a heart attack, another had some brain hemorrhage with no apparent conditions. And the girl never came back. So, the HR waited for a few days, and obviously, there are two people dead, one girl missing, everybody's wondering what's happening. So they started doing their own investigation. So her documents had her, where she stayed in Gurgaon. So they went to that address, and the landowner said that she had no clue who that girl was. Nobody of that name or that picture ever stayed there. And then at that time, there was nothing called background check and stuff. So I guess nobody even bothered to do that stuff, right? So on these people were like, who the fuck, man? Two people died. This girl missing. What the hell is happening? So through her education, qualifications, and stuff, they figured out, where her parents' address, and they went there. They rang the bell. They told her that have they heard from their daughter, and the parent was like taken aback. He's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Have you heard your daughter was working with our company? Have you heard anything from her?" And blah blah blah. And she's like, "Is this some kind of a joke?" I mean, they said, "No. I mean, she's just missing. I mean, she just went." She's like, "That can't happen." And they went inside, and they came back, and they showed her a document, which was the death certificate of that girl. That girl had died 4 years back. So this was there, which the thread ended. Now, what I didn't mention was they again started doing some more investigations. So they started listening to her calls. Right? So they went. So that 45 minutes call that made her so distressed, when they tried listening to it, the call duration was 45 minutes. The recording there was 45 minutes. But you couldn't hear a thing other than muffled sound. There was a muffled sound there for 45 minutes, like two people talking, but you couldn't figure it out. And then they took out her old sales calls, right, and started doing investigation. And the most people said that while they did remember, that they received a bill for a certain amount, they don't remember talking to anybody or buying that product.
Wow. See, that's what I was wondering when you said, because as you were mentioning it, I remembered this thread, and I remembered that the big reveal at the end is she's dead. But what I was thinking was, she's been doing well. She's been hitting targets. Uska kya hua?
So that's right. So, and so again, this story has been. So this pieces. So the first time the story was told to me by a cab driver. He used to drive cab for that particular call center. So he told me that story, and he used to be. Then somebody else added to it. So he told me till the part where those two people died. Then somebody else told me the part where the girl vanished. Then somebody else told me the part where they went to the parents' house. So all that, 10 people different telling the same story in different version, and I just put it together.
It's great. No, it's great. I think this reminds me. I don't know why I was thinking of this, but my nani had a joke where she would tell about Djinns, where she was like, there was a house apparently, and the house was supposed to be haunted, and everyone in the muhalla was very curious. No one knew about it, and then it was just considered to be haunted, and it was abandoned. And then one day, someone saw someone come out of that house, and they run up to them. He looks like a normal person, and they're like, "Kya scene hai? We've heard that this house is haunted." And he's like, he listens to the whole story, and he's very shocked and he's very surprised. And after a while, he's like, "No, I haven't seen something, but I've only been here 900 years, so it could be I've missed it." But wow, this was one of the really like interesting ones because it's so modern and it ties into like economic.
And it's the kind of thing so call center is they're young people when they start in the industry, so this is the kind of stuff that people start talking about when they'll smoke after a shift or they're having a tea after the shift, and it's sort of an urban legend. But like I said, people under 30s would have not listened to it even in India, so it's important I preserve the history for Gen Z.
Makes sense.
So
you were mentioning in your thread just before we have, I think, 5 minutes before our break, you were mentioning in the thread that there were some of the stories that you mentioned had some like news coverage also. Was this one of them, or was this too old? This was.
So if you go to internet right now and just put like call center horror stories in Gurgaon, you'll get this.
Oh wow. Okay. Rizwan's looking around like he can hear stuff, which is very unnerving at this situation. Rizwan, क्या आवाज आ रही है तुम्हें? कोई call center से तो आवाज नहीं आ रही.
That's I feel like loud bang sounds. या तो आंधी आ रही है या गोलियां चल रही हैं. It could just be.
गोलियां I guess would be a bit more of a Karachi thing. But anyway, हमारे padded room की अपनी भी छोटी mysteries चलती रहती हैं. Okay, what we're gonna do is to counter our paranoia on this new recording setup, we're gonna take a break. Just make sure कि ये साफ record हो गया, and then we'll just start up again. So please दूर हो जाओ. Be right back, guys. Yeah, so Jatin, I was just mentioning after our story, like I said, could you describe Delhi as you saw it? How long did you live in Delhi?
So I was born in Delhi, and then I was in Delhi till I was, I think, 34.
Okay.
When I moved to US, and in between I spent a couple of years in Hyderabad, which is like down south.
Okay.
But I've been like born, brought up, like I said, it's like true blue Delhi. So I think I'll start with. So Delhi is like, as a topic, you'll probably need another 20 podcasts for me to cover the entire this thing here. But let me start with, Delhi, if you ever, read about Delhi, the first thing they will start with when they start describing Delhi is like, it's a tale of 7 cities. And that's because Delhi has been built and rebuilt, plundered and rebuilt 7 times. So it's actually 7 different cities. And this is the 7th city, which is the new Delhi Delhi is the 7th city. And the legend is that whoever has rebuilt Delhi actually then was not able to rule it for a long time. And that actually holds true. If you look at from the time immortal till now, the governments have changed, all the rulers, they have kept changing. So that's like it's like the 7 cities. And because, every city, the center of their existence or the center of power was in somewhere else, Delhi has grown in like from different parts, and that's why these monuments and these old buildings, they are spread across. So when we talk, for example, when we talk about the Lieutenant's Delhi, the British Delhi, that is largely, if you see that area of, the India Gate, right? The central Delhi where you have the Rashtrapati Bhavan, the India Gate, where all the government buildings are there. So that's where the Britishers wanted to have started building New Delhi. So that's why that's one part of Delhi, right? Then there is Old Delhi, which is largely the Mughal, that part of Delhi. So that's why you have all the famous monuments, all the famous, Ghalib's house and all the famous poets of that time. That's part of where the entire culture of of Delhi. So that's old Delhi. It's like famous for food, for monuments, for stories. That's where you go if you like want the best of Mughal foods, the authentic Delhi food. You go there. So that's old Delhi, and then you have the central Delhi or the new Delhi, which is what Britishers built, or what we call as Lieutenant's Delhi, because Lieutenant is the person who actually built that architect. And then you have the South Delhi, which is again the South Delhi was established to build the houses for the government employees when the Britishers started their whole this thing. So they needed people to live because they were creating those centers of working and offices. So they built that whole South Delhi. Um, so that's where you have a lot of government. That's where my parents are from. My dad was a government officer, so you have that part of the Delhi where it's all government, largely government, but some other stuff as well. Also, South Delhi, and you have South Delhi and West Delhi, which saw the maximum people, refugees coming in after partition.
Okay.
So that's where you have a lot of, these people were given shops by the government to rebuild their entire lives. So you have a lot of, and that's why the whole South Delhi and West Delhi is also called, the Punjabi side of Delhi, because most of the people actually moved, people who have moved, like my grandparents, who moved from after the independence, they moved from Pakistan, and then they were given by, the shops, etc., by the government to rebuild their life or their houses. So that's largely South Delhi and West Delhi. And then it started growing, and because, as the population increased, you had these areas which were largely agricultural lands up until recently, or until say 15 years back, now being repurposed as huge residential multi-story apartments. All right, and that is your the areas like Noida or Gurgaon. So that's really the construct how Delhi is divided. It's very so like South Delhi, and every area has a very distinct characteristic to it. South Delhi, like I said, it's a part of the Delhi that's really expensive. It's got beautiful monuments and big parks and Lodi Garden. You'll probably hear about it. So it's like really the hub of the heart of Delhi. I'm obviously partial to it because of like sort of grown there. But that's the characteristic of South Delhi. It's green. It's very hip. It's very urban. Very well maintained. So that's South Delhi. The Central Delhi is it's got a very British era feel to it. The Connaught Place, which is you probably would have heard about. It's a main shopping area, which is built in like a circle. So it's got a very British era architecture to it. West Delhi, as you would imagine, it's because it's built from scratch from the people who moved as refugees, has a lot of old money, right? It's got a huge, big houses, big bungalows, and a lot of old money that people have acquired over the years. So that's why every part of Delhi has its own unique characteristics that you associate with it, and of course, food. Well, this food also is different for each part of Delhi. West Old Delhi is where you get best of Mughlai food, kebabs and stuff like that, right? South Delhi is where you get very hip, new age, multi cuisine, world food, and things like that. So that's how it's generally split.
So, being that, coming back to our I guess sort of topic of these stories and fables and such, would these generally in your experience be coming out from the older parts of town?
So old Delhi of course has its own stories, and all the 10 stories I've written, I've not even gone to the most most prominent one or the most well-known one. My thing was to start first telling those which people don't know much about. Old Delhi, of course, has its own set of every second old monument is probably will have some ghost story associated with it. And then you have that lahja of Old Delhi when somebody, like there's one story, somebody you're sitting having a kebab with somebody, and then he starts telling a story. 3 hours you'll be just sitting there listening to the story. So they have that lahja of way of telling a story. So Old Delhi has its own. So my experience, Old Delhi and South Delhi have the maximum ghost stories because of the old monuments and Maqbara and all those things that exist. And then West Delhi and parts of West Delhi and parts of East Delhi, the most prominent stories I hear are the most cliched one. Churel with a white, walking on a road with a white clothing. I will die before I write a story with that. I said, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear any churel wearing white. Give me churel wearing red, I'll buy it.
Is there a churel running with the car story?
Yeah. गाड़ी के पीछे हाँ वो तो it's like every big any highway or any flyover that has like 3 accidents, 4th day you will know that there was
churel activity. I think if the white wali churel is in Delhi, then the red wali is there in Karachi. Karsaz wali.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, she's it's supposed to be a bride, and our brides are red. So
our brides are red for that matter, but
maybe this one isn't a bride. The Delhi wali wasn't a bride. Karachi wali ki shadi ho nahi wali.
Maybe she's Christian.
Perhaps. Okay, so let's check out another few stories.
Yeah. Then. So this one is, I'll tell you. So this one I heard. This has a very a 14th century angle to it. So Delhi, the central. So this area where I'm talking about is called Karol Bagh, Jhandewala. It's a very commercial area. There's a lot of like wholesale shops and wholesale dealers and stuff like that. It's heavily commercial area part of Delhi, and a very Punjabi part of Delhi. And just behind that area is what we call is a part of Ridge. Now Ridge is essentially the forested area of Delhi, where they're really the lungs of our city. There are no construction, at least no legal constructions allowed. And Ridge again has its own set of stories, because now a lot of, as you go inside the Ridge, there are a lot of mazars of peers and old graveyards and stuff like that. So it has its own set of stories. But this one is, so in that Ridge, there is a hunting lodge that was built in around 14th century by Tughlaq, Firoz Shah Tughlaq. So it was built by, now why it was built, there are different, so again, it's one of those places where there's no like verified evidence as to why it was built or who exactly built it. But what we know, it dates to 14th century. It was built by, in Tughlaq dynasty. Now, and this story I'm telling you is about from, I have not been to that place in 10 years. Now, I've heard that, the Archaeological Institute, AIS of India have like cleaned up the place and made it pretty, and there's no more that aura to it. But 10 years back, now imagine having a 14th century lodge, which is, and you can probably look at the picture, it's called Bhuli Bhatiyari Ka Mahal. And it's in the middle of a ridge, which is like surrounded by jungle. You have this like 14th century lodge, which is like broken, and the stones are just spread across, very open sort of an area. And it was, it had a signboard which actually said that do not stay here. By the Delhi tourism, it said do not stay here beyond sunset. They actually officially had a sign. And at one point of time, even the Delhi police had put barricades there to ensure that people don't go there. So a lot of people who used to pass that place at night or who stayed there nearby have heard, shoutings and crying of a woman coming out from that. It was very shrill shouting and of a woman that coming out from that place. Also, Karol Bagh at one point of time, it used to be, जो पतंग का मांझा होता है, I don't know, मांझा, तो वो लोग वहाँ पर मांझा मेकर होते थे, वो जो पतंग का मांझा बनाते थे. So these guys used to go, because it was an open courtyard and a lot of air stuff, वो मांझा के ऊपर जब पूरा बना लेते थे, उसको सुखाने के लिए वो उस courtyard पे जाते थे कई साल पहले. And these guys then started noticing कि ये अपना जब खाना वाना खा के बैठते थे तो इनको अपने आप नींद आ जाती थी. They used to just fall asleep, even if they didn't want to, and not like asleep in the sense that they just eyes used to close and they couldn't open it up, as if they were under a spell. And then somebody was like pulling their cheeks, inserting the nails inside them, pulling their hair, shouting in the ears, and just generally just be all like things is moving all around you and just like hitting you, and they couldn't open their eyes, and they were just like in a spell.
And all of them felt this.
All of them felt this. So then they stopped going there. And that's how I think, and so like I said, there are different versions to it. Some people saying कि रात को आवाजें आती हैं, then this story comes into the picture. That's how I think it's got. known as haunted place. Then obviously, over the years, people didn't really bother, and then we had those hipster guys started doing photo walks. So they said,
एक तो ये Instagram generation जो है ना.
So they started doing photo walks. So this people went for a photo walk, and then the two of these people went deep inside the forest. And they saw a white well, which was very unusual because it is not an area where out of nowhere you'll see a white well, and it was like white in color because Delhi at maximum you'll have like a brick well, right? So white well, very unusual setting. So they got very excited. They clicked the pictures and all, and they went and called the rest of the people. And when the rest of the people came, the well was not there, and the pictures that they had clicked, while it had the jungle and everything else in that frame, the well was missing in the pictures.
Oh my God.
So then they described and stuff like that. So then, obviously the thing spread. So there's another photographer who was not part of that walk, then heard about this entire story, and he decided to go there the next day by himself. So he went there, he went inside, and he also saw the well. And he clicked the picture. The difference was that in his camera, the photograph stayed. So you could see the picture of the well in what he had clicked. So he got very excited. He called up his friends. He's like, "Tumhe to dikha nahi, mere to photograph mein aa raha hai wo." So what's happening? So they said, "ठीक है, कल तेरे घर पे मिलते हैं, and then let's see क्या scene है यहाँ पर, and probably we might just go there again." So this guy goes back to his home. Next morning, he is found dead in his house, and the house was bolted from inside.
Oh,
so there was no forced entry. He lived in like a 14th floor of a multi-story apartment, so nobody could have like come in through a window. There was no forced entry, and the cause of the death was drowning. There was not even a drop of water in the entire house. The cause of the death was drowning, and when they scanned his camera, there was no photo of the well.
Wow.
Holy shit. Okay.
That's amazing.
मतलब
उस कुएं के अंदर कोई डूब गया होगा किसी जमाने में.
Wow. क्या था? Yeah, again, this was so this story was narrated to me by one of the the guards who used to sit outside this that monument. So
that's crazy. And I remember this story. The drowning part it really ties the whole theme
with the
well. Yeah. And tasveer bhi nahi thi.
Photo bhi.
But Rizwan, देख लो photography के चक्कर में ना.
And like this story again, like how you mentioned, it's not an amateur incomplete story. It's like a proper plot.
Yeah. Like there's a setup which is पूरा मंजर कि वहाँ वो मांझा
Sorry,
बना रहे थे.
I ordered some food and the guy got lost in the compound. I returned the directions.
Bro, यहाँ बंदे डूब के मर गए हैं. तुम्हें पता नहीं चला क्या हुआ है. Now you have to watch.
No, rewind.
Now
It's fine. I'll listen to the recording.
So Khail's gonna be a viewer as well. But इस story में.
Jatin, do you know what's the meaning of Bhuli Bhatiyari? What does it mean?
So there was difference. So Bhuli Bhatiyari basically means the lost soul. Bhuli is lost, Bhatiyari is bhatakne wali.
Yeah. Just Bhule Bhatke, sort of.
So they're different. So there's one story is that there was the Firoz Shah had built his tomb for a lady. And then she went a little crazy, and then she started wandering, and that's her. So that's Bhuli Bhatiyari. Literally, the translation is somebody who's lost and somebody who's wandering. And then there are different stories. Somebody said somebody came here and stayed in that this thing. So there's no like fixed. Yeah. Like Red Fort, you know what Red Fort is and why it's there, right? But this place, nobody really can figure out why it's called, and there are different versions to it, but nothing that's verified.
But it is, but because that name is accepted, I mean, कुछ तो story है.
कुछ तो है, absolutely, कुछ तो है.
Yeah.
कुछ तो है.
That's great. ये मुगल और उनके ज़माने की हरकतें जो है ना, I mean, वो अब तक भुगत रहे हैं.
ये इसीलिए लाहौर फोर्ट की जो एक स्टोरी मैंने पहले काफी लोगों से सुनी थी. So there's a fort in Lahore too. I don't know if you know that, Jatin. So मुगल के ज़माने का. And again, a lot of security guards work inside and at the gates and everything. And we've been there quite a lot in Saloma because I'm a wedding photographer and people do like wedding bridal shoots there. So I asked these two security guards at two separate occasions कि यहाँ कुछ है क्या, क्योंकि सुना है रात को कुछ दिखता होगा, you know, such an old monument, because the fort is closed at sunset, so people are not allowed inside. And both of them at separate occasions had the same story to tell, that they've seen this one entity at night in the darkness in the fort grounds, the main middle grounds, and it's some dark creature which is like 10 feet tall, and it just walks through the grounds. And they've tried like yelling out to it ke kaun ho tum, ye wo, and nothing. Yeah, I don't know why they want to know.
That's always a good idea. You see a monster, draw attention to yourself.
Yeah. You see a dark 10-foot tall entity and you're like, हाँ जी, कहाँ जा रहे हैं? तुसी किथे?
That's such a bored person thing to do.
Yeah. See, I think that's another difference, that, you know, because, you know, Pakistani culture is very full of jinn stories. So you, I think, probably would have a lot of stories which like larger than life characters and thing.
Yeah.
Our part of the world, what's the stories that I have heard, it's not about, you know, कोई 10 feet का था या कोई 15 feet का था. It has been कोई बंदा था, वो जिंदा था, मरा था, but it was not like out of the whack. Other than, of course, where there's a specific jinn stories are there. But I think that's again because, you know, wherever you find those jinn stories, you'll also have those larger than life characters.
I think in our previous Jinn Stories episodes, we've had a few 8-foot tall, 7-foot tall, dark entity type situations.
In a lift.
Yeah. But हमारी यहाँ वो like हमारा जो लाहौर का घर है, it's so weird how, you know, वैसे तो कहने को अलग-अलग कहने को तो अलग-अलग मुल्क हैं, but the stories are so linked के my dad's family moved from Amroha to Lahore. Obviously they left everything. So like you mentioned, when people moved to Delhi, they had left everything behind and they were allotted new houses and stuff. So हमारा लाहौर वाला घर, Model Town was apparently built by Lahore had a large Hindu population.
Yeah, because we also have Model Town. There's a Model Town in Delhi as well.
Acha. So the whole Model Town was built like, is apparently Yarn or Rizwan. My dad says this, you can confirm. I'm sure he's not lying. But he's like, it's all built in like the shape of a flower, like the architecture of the different blocks. And apparently the architect of the place lived in the Haveli that we got. तो हमारे जो घर वाले आए थे मतलब वो पूरा टब्बर था. Yeah. So my dad was telling me कि in like the 60s or 70s that family came back to visit Pakistan just अपना घर देखने के लिए. So it's just, you know, just as I was mentioning over the past, it's like a weird thing. जैसे जैसे वक्त गुजारा, जैसे जैसे इंडिया पाकिस्तान के बीच में हालात मुश्किल होते जा रहे हैं, my desire to go to India keeps increasing somehow. Also because I think my grandparents have all now passed, तो उनकी बड़ी stories होती थी इंडिया के ज़माने में, because नानी वगैरह were all from Delhi and बचपन सारा था ही उधर. But now those stories aren't there anymore, so I'm like, how do I get there?
Yeah, and I think you know, that's so like I said, my grandparents were all in Rawalpindi, right? Now, some of the languages that they have or the words that they have carried over, it's Punjabi. But even with the normal Punjabi families, they don't use those words. It's like I don't know whether you know what Rajma is.
Yeah, Rajma, yeah. Big fans.
Correct. So in my family, it was called Moti.
Okay.
So, and the garlic is in Hindi, it is called lasan.
Yeah.
And Punjabi also is called lasan. But in my family, it's called thoom.
Thoom. Oh, that's actually Arabic.
Yes, exactly. So because these are the words that were there in Rawalpindi, and they're not Hindi words, they're not Punjabi words, but they were the words that was very specific to that region that they came from, and they just. So in Delhi, when we speak to people, Punjabis, they don't understand it. But when we speak to people who actually moved from Rawalpindi, they understand it. Or probably, if there are Pakistanis who are in Pindi, if I say this to Shoaib Akhtar, maybe he'll recognize it. So I'm just saying.
I wouldn't go there.
I'm going to embarrass myself. I should know this because I'm from Pindi, but I don't. My family probably does.
No, but the thing is also, it's just that transfer of information from generation to generation. Like, perhaps your family held on to things as their identity in a new place stronger. Ho sakta hai Pindi mein these words aren't spoken anymore.
Correct. Absolutely.
No, I think they may be spoken, but I just don't know of them because I'm such a.
What of course.
Yeah.
But like my dad says, and maybe again Rizwan, you can also verify this. Punjabi is all the same, like initially, but Pakistan ki Punjabi is now not what Punjab in India ki Punjabi speak.
Absolutely. So your Pakistani urban Punjabi would probably be different than Pakistani rural Punjabi.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
And the same is there. The same in the Pakistan, the India side of Punjab. Again, what you speak in Chandigarh or in more urban side of Punjab, and what you speak in more rural side of Punjab. It's very thet. So like in Punjabi, in rural side, everything starts with shole. It's not chole. It's a shole. So. And the dialect change, same to what we speak in Delhi is probably, we probably understand what each other speaks, but the dialect is still different.
Yeah.
So I think, there's a book called Remembrance of Partition by Aanchal Malhotra. So she is she's a very famous oral historian. So she had spoken to people who and she runs something called, I think, Museum of Memory or something like that. So basically things that, the objects and artifacts that people carried during partition or they got during partition and the stories around it. So they're not, again, she goes out there, she talks to people, she collects stories while talking to people on both sides of the border. It's a very beautifully written book. You should, if you're interested in those kind of stories, you should read it.
Yeah, I have. Chalo, once we're done with the recording, we can talk a bit amongst ourselves about my family's weird connections to Delhi. But how about I think we're coming up on the 1 hour mark, but we have time for I think one more story if you're game.
Yeah, I'm game. Do you want to take a break again?
Oh no.
Okay.
Well,
I don't know.
technically we should. Okay, no, that's good. We'll take a break. Thank you for reminding us. So we're gonna take another paranoid break and come back immediately after. Right, so we're back from break number 2. As always, we end up having very interesting conversations in the break. अच्छा होता है अगर हम record कर लेते but हमें ख्याल ही नहीं आया, बातों में निकल गए.
Ali, which was the third one which you're referring to, which you said you found interesting?
There was the ghost hunter guy who came back.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what I think. So this is an interesting one. So I won't take the name because obviously I'll rather protect the
but real people.
Yeah. So this person, he came to America. He started to become a pilot, and that's where while he was staying in Texas, he saw that first time he saw an image moving in his hotel room. So that's how this was his first exposure to sort of ghosts and paranormal. But then he moved to Florida, and in Florida apparently his house was haunted. And he used to have regular paranormal experiences, and that's why he left flying, and he got himself. So U.S. had this this paranormal certification, and you're formally certified as a ghost buster.
Yeah,
ghost hunter, ghost buster. मतलब दुनिया भर की certificate. So anyways, this guy got formally certified as a ghost hunter, and then he moved to India, and he had a house very close to where I stayed, and he opened his office here. Now, if somebody had told me this, that you have a ghostbuster who gets about 600 calls a day in Delhi, I would have been like, somebody's just bluffing. But apparently, this guy had a team. He had a team of 10, 12 people who they used to buy stuff from US, those laser guns and those images and all that stuff to actually track ghosts and stuff. And they used to get about 600 calls a day from all across. He traveled to, I think he said he traveled to about, so overall he said he traveled, he had an exposure to over 2,000 paranormal experiences across the globe. And he came in various shows, and he was called to Australia and across the globe, and he was very well respected in this profession. He had been to some of the most haunted places in India. So there's a place called Mussoorie, which is a small hill station, right just outside of Delhi, and there Mussoorie had these lime mines. That was used to mine the lime quarries.
Yeah.
And there's a story that about 50,000 miners there died
from a collapse or something.
From over a period of time, from very bad mining conditions, right? And it's a ghost town, and they say there's witches who roam around that town, and there have been instances that the helicopters flying over the place have actually crashed. It's very common for cars near that highway on night to just fall from the highway and go astray and stuff. So all these things happen. So he had been there. He said that was the most haunting experience of his life. So he has been all to those very extremely haunted places and stuff like that, and he has captured the sound recording and stuff like that. And then coming back. So he was so on this one particular day he was in West Delhi, and he was investigating a case where this couple used to see the images of a child passing through their house from their bedroom to this thing, and he was investigating that case. So he came back home around 2 a.m. He had his breakfast and stuff like that, and he went to take a bath. Now he had his wife, he had his parents in the house. And they heard some muffling sounds, etc., and they said ki theek hai, because usually you have those kundis in bathrooms that'll make that kind of a noise. So it was that kind of a noise that was coming, so they ignored it. And then when he didn't come back after 2 or 3 hours, they before I go there, so while investigating this entire thing, he had this theory of black mark on neck.
Mm-hmm.
So he had seen a lot of deaths which were by having a black mark on the neck, and they said this is essentially a sign of a spirit, a troubled spirit who's killing you. You've been around a troubled spirit, and the spirit is so troubled that she sort of killed you. So there was you are exposed to a lot of troubled spirits when you die that way. So after like 1 or 2 hours, when they didn't open the door, these guys broke open the door, and this guy was dead. With a black mark around his neck. Now this guy lived in 9th or 10th floor. His parents and his wife was in the house, so nobody could have entered through the house. There's nobody could have entered from, technically very difficult in the middle of the day for somebody to enter through a window. So I think they and his father said that for the last few weeks or few months, he was complaining that he's seeing the spirits around him and is surrounded by the spirits that nobody else could see, but he could. And all the paranormal experiences that he had, all the spirits that he was exposed to, they were all coming back now, just sort of pulling him down, and they could have been one of those. And yeah, so they finally closed it down as a suicide, I think. I mean, I think that's how the case was finally. So the person existed, the person actually died. Now, what's the exact story? Anybody's guess.
Yeah. And this is someone you were exposed to somewhat personally because they live close to you?
No, so I didn't know him personally. Yeah, the house. So it was a very talked about conversation. Both me and my wife also. Actually, my wife stayed in that place. I moved there later. But yeah, there was a lot of local conversation. It was covered in news. It was local newspapers in the area, special newspaper. It was a big thing. And it was actually scary because in an apartment complex which has 600 people. You suddenly come up with a story where this person who's actually a paranormal and a public paranormal investigator. Everybody goes when he going out of the house, he's probably going out to catch a ghost or to do some sort of thing. And he's coming back in the apartment. He's done the same, and then suddenly he's found dead in these mysterious circumstances. So obviously there's a lot of buzz and fear in that area. But
wow, that's crazy.
That is insane.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it's particularly interesting because like it's not like this is just a random person who something happened to. He was fully involved in the field, so to speak.
Yeah, and his team said that there's actually a website they made to figure out who actually killed him. His team said that they're certain that it's some spirit or paranormal. Police obviously said that's bullshit. His dad felt the same, that it's some paranormal because he was seeing that nobody else was. So
wow.
You said that he went to Australia, and all I can think of
US.
is US. Oh, well, I thought it was Australia, but this sounds very much like Steve Irwin.
Oh.
It's like
the field he was involved in, usi field ke chakkar mein.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was a pretty young guy. He was like in his 30s.
Wow,
pretty young guy.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And also the fact that he started in the US. I remember watching America, so there's so many TV shows also, paranormal investigation and whatnot.
I used to watch TAPS. I don't know if you guys watch TAPS.
TAPS, yeah. I think TAPS is some acronym of the team. वो ऐसा ही होता था कि अंधेरे घर में जाके नाइट विजन कैमरा इज देयर एनीवन पे कुर्सी गिर जाती थी
और वो EMF उनके पास होता था.
There was some tracker thing that they had.
Electromagnetic fields.
Fields and stuff. Yeah. So this same thing he used to buy. This guy used to buy and
And he used to get, you said 600 calls a day.
600 calls a day.
Wow. All from all over India.
Yeah, from all over India.
Wow.
Little फट रही है मेरी यार.
Yeah, ये तो होगा भाई. That's great. Okay, I think.
I wanted to ask Jatin, what is your degree of belief in the paranormal?
See, I honestly, if I believed in it, I probably won't be able to collect so many stories, because the only way I'm able to like write these stories, I mostly write these stories at 1 o'clock my time in the morning. Right, so if I actually believed in it, probably I would be too scared to write these things. But I honestly don't have an opinion. The only thing when somebody asks me this is I think about one particular instance. Again, I put it on my Twitter feed where there was this this uncle I knew who had Alzheimer's, and he had these episodes when he used to like sit in the room and talk to his brother and his father. Who were dead like 10 years ago, right? And he used to actually have like conversation as if his brother and his dad are sitting in that room. And doctors obviously said that these are hallucinations. But then I always think that who are we to say that it's not actually true? Yeah, I mean, we are not there. We are not inside the uncle's brain. Then there was when I posted this story, there's another this friend of mine who replied to this on Twitter. And she said that her maternal uncle, her mama, died the day after her maternal grandmother died. The nanny died.
Yeah.
And her nanny passed away. The next day he ate something and he said, "I'm coming to you," and he just passed away. And then there was like couple of other people sharing very personal anecdotes, which you could figure out that they're not like made up or they're not lies. They're like shaping up very personal anecdotes about their father and their mother, and how if once the wife passed away or the mother passed away, the father also next day just went. So
yeah,
it's one of those areas. People believe in souls. So when I ask people, do they believe? They say, yeah, we believe in souls and we believe in troubled souls. So, personally speaking, I never, I've had like a couple of experiences, which maybe you could justify, maybe you could not. But I would prefer not to believe it because it takes the fun out of the ghost stories. For me, they're like a lot of fun. If I start getting scared of it, it'll just take the fun out of it.
It'll become too real.
Yeah, it becomes too real.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think that's a good place to wrap up the episode.
Yeah.
These are people watching, people listening. These are just 3 of at least 10. I'm sure by the sounds of it, Jatin has like several more जो के लिखते लिखते
I'll probably take 50. I have like ready.
50.
I can.
Oh God.
I think you should like Twitter to chalo theek hai, these threads do well, but you know it would work as like a book, as maybe it's like an ebook.
So there are actually people, friends who have been suggesting that write like a flash fiction.
Yeah.
So,
I would read
That would be very interesting, especially have you when this thread gained all the traction that it did people get in touch with you perhaps from Delhi or wider India who also had heard of these stories?
You won't believe it. The number of people have actually reached out to me. So there are two parts of it, and that's very so. You know what? Why I wrote those stories were that most of the ghost stories in the popular culture, they are written in a very mysterious way, right? So, jungle tha, jungle mein ghar tha, dark bangla tha, usme andhera tha. It's written in a very mysterious way, right? So you can sort of step away from it. It's not happening in your life. You're not part of the story. The way I write my story is, so for example, there's a couple of stories I've written about a house. So I'll tell them exactly where their house is. So there's a place called Green Park. Near the Green Park, there's a very famous kebab wala, which is called Rajendra Dhaba. Everybody knows that place. Everybody will pass that place. Everybody in Delhi would have eaten there. Anybody who's outside Delhi would have known it. So I would say, राजेंद्र के ढाबा से राइट लो, पीछे ग्रेवयार्ड है, ग्रेवयार्ड के पीछे घर है, रिंग रोड के साथ में. Now suddenly you are in the story. You are now part of the story, and that's how people start. अरे हाँ यार, मैं वहाँ से निकला था, ये हो रहा था, पक्का ये भी वही चीज. हुई हो चाहे नहीं हो, suddenly you are part of the story.
Yeah, it really anchors it in like people's memories.
तो कुछ हुआ हो चाहे ना हुआ हो, बंदे के दिमाग में हाँ यार इसको देखा है, मैंने भी यही देखा है भाई, मैंने भी यही देखा होगा. So then people start, I've got n number of, everybody has. So here's another interesting thing, okay? So in between all these stories, I'll throw in one which is completely a figment of my imagination. That place doesn't exist. Those people, for most part, all these places exist, these people exist, these stories exist, just in different versions. But every once in a while, not in this thread, but otherwise when I speak to people, I will throw one which is completely figment of my imagination. And still I will have people saying, "Abbe, maine bhi dekha tha." अरे वो जगह ही नहीं है, तूने कहाँ से देख लिया? And not one, there's like 10. अबे हाँ यार, मैंने भी देखा था उस दिन, मैंने आ रहा था वहाँ से. People have, everybody has this thing of being associated with something that has a history.
Yeah. But I mean, it's great. I think it's a very cool thing that you're doing. There's a lot of oral history traditions, वैसे भी. But because these are so...
This is the alarm that for the lockdown.
Oh, really?
Yeah, even if the phone is silent, it does it anyway. So
do you have like some sort of app?
No, it's just the police sends it out to every phone.
What?
अब दूसरे phone भी बजेगा. It's like half an hour before lockdown starts. So now lockdown timing.
It's 11.
10 o'clock. No, 10 p.m. So now 9:30 का काम है. अब दूसरे phone भी आएगा. Sorry for that.
That's fucking weird. So Jatin Sarkhail is in the UAE. He's in Abu Dhabi. And wahan the corona situation is the lockdown
pretty bad,
at night.
It's pretty bad. I know Qatar also was pretty bad.
How are things getting better in Jersey?
I don't think things are getting better anywhere. It's just that people are getting, or majority of the places, it's just that people have to find a way to live around it.
Yeah.
For how long will you people's livelihood, you can't stop your livelihood.
And not everyone is lucky enough to live in New Zealand. But yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, as I was saying, that's a great collection of 3 stories, and I really stories to chalo theek hai, there's Jinn stories, and they have a very attractive element to them, but I really enjoy the Delhi placement and that aspect of those. That's very cool, and my
with
desire,
more of a history lesson than a horror story.
Yeah. And my desire to visit the city is like, even more now, despite the chudele and the bhuli bhatki ruin. It's all good.
Karachi ki chudele to dekhni hai, Delhi ki dekhni hai.
Do you have in Delhi? Is there the Pichal Peri tradition of the witch with whose feet are turned backwards?
So everywhere in the world which have ulte feet.
Oh, अच्छा.
So जो भी हाँ. तो वो क्या बताऊँ? So दो चीजें आपको, so तीन चीजें for Delhi
So ये
story.
standard edition model है which.
हाँ. So एक हाँ. So this is so two things are like standard, right? So one is एक तो white कपड़ा पहना होगा, दूसरा पैर उल्टे होंगे. So these are like standard feature.
Right.
One additional feature is कि वो सब उड़ रही होती हैं, वो चल नहीं रही होती.
Yes.
वो
Yes.
आधी हवा में होती. These are like,
That's the kind of chudel my brother saw in Dubai once.
Yeah.
But no man, how true that was. Piela tha. I don't know.
People who are listening, that's episode Jinn Story 1, probably episode 3 or something, or 2. I don't know. Way back in the waybacks. But I think we're good, guys, to wrap up.
Sorry, one more question.
Oh no.
So you know how I don't know if it's a Pakistani thing, but it's also a Muslim thing where we're told not to sit under a tree after Maghrib prayers. Is that a thing in Delhi?
हमारे यहाँ ये होता है कि जिन जो है ना वो दरख्तों में होते हैं.
But it happens at sundown, like at dusk. It has to be
same. So but हमारे में होता है correct. So I have got two things. So one वो होता है दरख्तों में ही होता है, but वो people के दरख्त में specifically होता है. Not in any.
Definitely.
People का दरख्त होता है उसमें, और वही वो sundown के बाद होता है. So this is one. The second, which my grandmother and also my wife. So when I used to go out and I'm like going to old monument and this thing, my grandmother and my wife, they never let me wear a perfume.
Acha.
Oh. This is something my wife acquired because she is originally from, her father is from Multan. So this is something coming from there because jinns are attracted to nice fragrance. You should never have open hair.
Yes.
You should never,
open hair,
correct. You should never, because jinns are attracted to hair and perfume. So that's again a story that's been passed on from from that side of the world and still followed at least till that. Alright.
है crossing histories and borders. Hair loving, perfume loving jinns.
I love the Pakistan-India collaborations, man. This is
Jinn collab.
Jinn collabs.
देखिए हमारे लीडर्स को बताया जाए कि अगर जिन कोएग्जिस्ट कर सकते हैं तो हम भी कोएग्जिस्ट कर सकते हैं.
Jatin, thanks very much for coming.
So much, guys.
We're going to wrap the episode now.
Thank you, man.
Do you want people? We're going to link your thread in the episode in the show notes anyway, so people can find you. Is there any other website, Instagram, something you want them to look at?
No. Like I said, Instagram is for
guys. Thanks very much for listening, for watching. I am the Malhotra. That is Rizwan Pelwan, Sahil 7 Fun, TPR Pod, our group account, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. Get in touch. Check out Jatin's thread. Thanks again for coming. We're gonna wrap up the episode now. Thanks very much. We're gonna stop recording. Take care, everyone. Bye.